anyone who's curious, wondering, hey, where are episodes 1 and 2? Well, because Cook County, Illinois, allows you to view court proceedings, I sat down and I watched the court date that Toby had, Tobias Francis, and I watched the proceedings. I watched everything unfold, and he decided to, take the plea deal, which gets him off of house arrest and the ankle monitor off and, back to some semblance of a normal life. But part of that plea deal is he has to take anger management classes, which I'd love to take some more anger management myself because, I get angry sometimes when I'm driving. I get road rage. I think everyone can use some guidance in the anger department in this day and age. Under the circumstances, take some classes. But also as kind of an attachment to that agreement, he also had to agree to not speak of the plaintiff in a public forum for 2 years' time or discuss the case. In order for him to not be in violation of that agreement, I had to 86 the first 2 episodes, as well as the forthcoming 8 to 10 more. And, I'm not going to destroy them or anything like that. They're going to go in a cloud file and collect cyber dust. Someday, maybe if I write a book, I'll have all of that source material. But had I allowed those to remain online, Tobias would go to jail for 30 days. So I took them down while the court proceeding was happening. As soon as I heard that spoken, I got to work online tearing all of that down. Now, I know people are asking the question online here. I've been asked numerous times, was he convicted? Not really. A conviction, that's when, a trial, like a jury of your peers trial, and you get sentenced to time in prison, right? He wasn't sentenced to time in prison or anything. He's, as someone who took a plea bargain, he had, things he had to do in order to be in compliance with taking that plea deal. And it's anger management classes and no speaking of the case or the plaintiff in public for 2 years. So that's that. So you may ask yourself, how did I get here? You may ask yourself, what the fuck are you doing now, man? Like, are you pulling up stakes, taking the circus on the road? Well, Toby's experience can no longer be a part of this. I guess my experience can, but I don't know that anyone really cares too much about my end of all of this. I was a fly on the wall between 2 human beings. And, what else can you say about it all? I'd also like to, kind of field another aspect of all of this, that being other allegations made that, he's not in jail, right? So I don't have any information as far as what became of those allegations, but he's not in jail. So I'm guessing nothing's coming of it. We'll see. And people accusing him of, dating this much younger woman. I guess this woman may appear young to some, but I have it on good authority, she's in her 30s. And Tobias is in his 40s. It's not really that weird. My wife is 8 years younger than me. Do the math. I'm I'm 49. So that happens sometimes. You know, there could be a kind of age gap between adults in relationships. It's completely okay. I know all of this is just cannon fodder, and I understand that Reddit specifically is a place where people go to shitpost. And I'm sure you all will. And that's fine. You can have fun with it. I don't take part in it, but, you know, have fun, have a blast.
This episode was created without the knowledge of or the participation of Tobias Francis or any of the other participants in the court proceedings, charges filed, or rumor mill that had sprouted up in the interim thereof, the court cases, allegations, or any of the actions depicted in the confines of this episode. It was created by myself, personally, on my own, of my own accord. My name is Peter Thomas Tansky, and this is live from a world of empty threats.
You know what? My relationship with my son, and I've always known him as Chan.
Yeah.
He goes, Tobias is his legal name. Toby is not my legal name. Toby is my professional name. My real name is David. The band I was working for started calling me Toby as a joke. And it became my nickname that I've used my whole professional career. My family still calls me David. Tobias's mother and I divorced when he was 7 years old. I've always worked on the road. So even at the times I've been in relationships, I'm not home much. Tobias was my first child. I was 22 when he was born. I started working for Aerosmith when I was also 22. Or shortly thereafter. I was lucky enough to get successful early with working for bigger bands. The time I spent with Aerosmith really helped my career. I was involved in making 3 records and doing, I think I did 5 tours with them total over around a 10-year period of time. And where I'm not present in my children's lives, I've compensated in other ways. When Tobias graduated from high school, he got an internship with a record company in New York. I had nothing to do with that. He got that on his own. What I did was paid for an apartment for a year. So in lieu of going to college, he could get that education because he wanted to be in the record business.
Yeah.
And I have connections with the artists. I don't have connections with labels. Never had a positive record company experience to make me want to have anything to do with that. He said he had those aspirations. So I paid $1,000 a month for him to live in Manhattan and chase that. he developed a drug problem in his teen years that I was not aware of. I'm a cannabis user. I don't drink. I don't do other drugs. I do smoke weed a lot. Well, there's times I haven't done it, and there's times I probably did it too much. Honestly, I would not have made it through the 9 years with Kanye if I had not been smoking a lot of weed. When I was interviewed for the job there, the first question I was asked is, do you smoke weed? Tobias had a drug problem much worse than I was aware of. And I work for artists that use cocaine, heroin, meth, on and on. I mixed the last run of shows Alice in Chains did with Lane.
Yeah.
Lane was a mess. He still performed incredibly well for somebody that was literally dying in front of us. So I know what crack smells like.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked for junkies. I've worked for people on pharmaceuticals. I worked for, did a Prince tour at his worst, drug-wise, right before he sort of came to his drug problems. I can tell somebody's drunk. I can tell somebody's on drugs. I can't tell if they've got a drug problem. And I wasn't around him consistently enough to really know.
Yeah.
I knew that his behavior got bizarre and he wasn't honest with me. And I started catching him in lies. And then his drug problem got to a point where he started robbing people.
Yeah.
To support his habit. And I was one of the victims of that. He took a bunch of odds and ends from my home studio, and I prosecuted him for that. That's how he ended up in jail. And I didn't talk to him after that for a few years. There was a pattern, and another myth I would like to dispel here is that I keep bailing him out of problems and I inadvertently enabling him to victimize other people. That could not be farther from the truth. I actually had him arrested, went to great lengths to get him prosecuted, and got him incarcerated to try to get him clean. Because the people around me that I trusted for advice told me that was the best option, or he was going to die. Well, and his cousin Christopher, who was in a similar age, same path, did die, overdosed and died. And doing the same thing. He's smoking fentanyl.
Yeah.
For crying out loud. He was gambling with his life constantly. I didn't know this. We set traps for him to get him into rehab, and nothing worked. So we did the hardest thing I've done in my life, which was to slam the door, stop dealing with him, you know, and sit and wait for the phone call that my uncle got when Christopher passed away.
Yeah.
And that's why I took Christopher's death even harder than normal, you know, and I exploded on Tobias. When I called Tobias and told him that Chris was gone, and had to explain to him, no, Chris is dead. He's not gone. He's fucking dead. And then I went off on him saying, I waited for this call. I thought this would be you, you know? So I broke off all contact for a few years. And he reached out to me when he and Nicole started their relationship. And I reluctantly, he told me it was really important. So I went and met with them, met her, and I can't remember if it was the first meeting or the second meeting. At dinner, they told me that she was pregnant. And the time I spent with them, I was told a narrative from the call. I was told that she was a first-time mother, that she wanted to ultimately do something within the music business, that she had been working for an independent label in San Francisco, so she had some experience, and she thought she could, and she had been sober for 8 years, and that she knew how to get Tobias sober and keep him sober, and it was her intention to get him sober and for them to have that baby, and for her to help him build the band up to a point where they could support themselves. That's the story I was told. That's the story that I based my decisions that I made going forward. I asked about prenatal care. How pregnant was she? And at that point, less than 3 months, I believe. Still hadn't seen a doctor. So my first interaction with them as a couple was to help arrange for a doctor to be brought into it and for her to get prenatal care moving forward.
Yeah.
And again, I was told she was a first-time mother, and I proceeded under that with that information I thought was fact. The pregnancy, there was issues in the third trimester, and she was placed on bed rest. They were living in Chicago. The band went out on tour, and the last show of the tour was in San Diego. While on a doctor-ordered bed rest, she flew to San Diego to go to the last show of the tour, and then to ride from San Diego back to Portland, where the band was based out of, even though he and Nicole were living in Chicago at the time.
Yeah.
And on that drive, she started hemorrhaging just outside of Sacramento. Chan called me panicked, said they were headed to the hospital. I was shocked that she was there because she was not supposed to be there. I got a call about an hour later that she had gone into that they had induced, no, it was a C-section. They had to take the baby due to what the hemorrhaging, whatever it was that was happening. They decided now was the time. They took her in, did an emergency C-section. Tobias called me and told me that it was a boy, which we knew anyway, that he was healthy, he's happy, he was elated. He wanted me to fly up there. I told him I would come up later that day. We got off the phone. He called back about 20 minutes later and said, "Dad, he's dead." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "He's dead." Told me that a mistake had been made by one of the nurses, and that they had collapsed one of his lungs and punctured the other lung by giving him too high a level of oxygen for a newborn so that they had moved the decibel point over and accidentally given him 10 times what they should have been. I immediately got up out of the chair I was in, grabbed my wallet, my phone, ran to the car. I booked a flight on the way to Burbank Airport. I was there about 2 hours or so later, as quickly as possible. It was dark blue still. Chan was, or Tobias was pacing. They had him breathing, but he had been without oxygen for a few minutes, and they were really concerned about the damage that had been done. It was just the most crushing experience you could ever have. I'm still processing, why on earth are you here in Sacramento? Mm-hmm. Why is this happening, and why is this happening here? You know, and her traveling on bed rest was glossed over by the mistake the nurse made. I spent the night there, and I had brought no luggage with me, nothing. I just literally had just gone there. The next day, I saw Tobias went over to the nurse that had made the mistake, and this lady had not left. At that point, she was about 40 hours into her shift wouldn't leave. She was so devastated by the mistake she had made. And Nicole was furious at her, calling her names, treated her horribly, which is understandable to a certain degree. But I watched Tobias go over, turn this woman around, and hugged her and said, "Look, you made a mistake."
Mm.
It honestly is the first thing he had done in a long time that I felt proud of as a parent. And I'm still processing all of this, and terrified I wasn't going to make it. Yeah. Now, in full disclosure, Tobias was still using drugs at this point.
Yeah.
I didn't know this. I still didn't notice. And then while they were there in the intensive care for 3 months, he wrote what I think is one of his best records. And I hadn't paid any attention to his music. I was so mad at him for stealing, for how he was conducting his life, that even though each time he would do a record, he'd send it to me, I just stuck it on the shelf.
Yeah.
I was literally so mad at him that I would not give it a listen. I didn't want to like it. I didn't want, and I didn't agree with him choosing that over getting a shit together. Yeah. And I come from a world where you suffer for your art, but you don't make others suffer too. Right. That's not acceptable. It was clear that they needed help. And Jennifer, my daughter's mother, and I had a serious talk about going to court and taking that. We thought that might be the best, because we were already seeing both of them not doing the things that we expected to see them doing as parents. And at that point was a week old, but we were already unsure of what the right thing to do for. And I'm doing this podcast for is the one I care about. Chan is a grown man, or Tobias is a grown man. Nicole is a grown woman. And both of them have made ridiculously horrible choices in the last 10 years.
Sure.
And that's led to where we're at right now. So I tried to do the honorable thing. So we decided that we would get rent a place for them to live. They came and lived with us initially at first, and that was too many people in the same house. So I found a house that we rented for $1,800 a month that we moved them into. We wanted to keep them close so we could watch. And we all got incredibly attached to as a newborn. Well, he was about 3 months old when he came to live with us. He was in the hospital for the first 3 months. And we were all concerned because of him being deprived of oxygen for so long, as what challenges that was going to put on the plate for him, and in turn his parents. And so this notion that I supported Chan, I supported him when he got out of high school for that year. And when he got married to Natalie, I was shocked that he got married, and I helped them with an apartment for a year. I got the house in Palmdale for Nicole and Chan, and for to keep close by. And it became evident pretty quickly that neither one of them was inclined to work, that the band becoming successful enough for them to live off of seemed to be the only option that they were considering.
Right.
My daughter spent an enormous amount of time just holding him and doting over him when he was still in it. And he did not walk early, didn't talk early. That gave us more concerns about the brain injury he probably sustained. As it turned out, he's not been affected negatively. He did talk late. He developed a little later than normal, but is an amazing little boy. He's so smart. He's so sensitive, loving, and caring. That's part of my concern with everything that has played out in the last few months. Is I really wonder what goes through his head when he lays down to go to sleep at night. We decided collectively that helping them become self-sufficient financially was our best option, because it wasn't sustainable just to keep supporting them while they chased their success with the band. And another myth I would like to dispel is I used industry connections to help them become successful. What I did was take the one artist that I personally was a fan of and is still a fan of, even though he's been dead for 30 years, is Frank Zappa. If for all the Zappa fans out there, you know this, I had a concept from studying Frank Zappa that any artist, especially artists that are eclectic in some way, that appeal to a pocket audience, not a mass audience, but there's an audience out there, but a much smaller audience, much like Zappa had with the Mothers. And he set up his own record company, his own merch company, and direct marketed, for the most part, his product to his audience. So I suggested to Tobias and Nicole that they try that themselves. And I loaned them $4,000 for to create merch stock. So that $4,000 loan, and then I loaned them $8,000 to do a record. And the record came out great. The artwork was great. The whole thing was done well. They took the concept that I gave them, and the two of them together turned it into a doable thing that generated enough money that even during the pandemic, which is when I did not have the income to continue paying all of their bills. Yeah. I had to call Nicole and Tobias and say, look, I don't have the money anymore. So you got to take it from here. At that point, they had already done enough, and out of need, more than anything, they sold a lot of merch that year, got record released. The 2 live streams that the band did, I was involved in them. Since live shows were shut down, I was home. My involvement in that was just I donated my services, and I drove up to Portland with a van full of recording equipment, mostly that I own and some that I pulled from one of the companies I work with. And for next to nothing, we produced a really good live stream that generated a bunch of income. And they truly, and out of necessity, created a working model of what Frank and Gail Zappa had done. Yeah, in the late 70s. And they proved the concept that I had. All I gave them was the concept and the loan to do it. A loan that I was not paid back for. That's another story. Now, again, I'm operating under a narrative that has been put forward to me very firmly. In 2019, I was told that Nicole had a daughter that was 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised by that. I called her and asked her, what's the deal? I was told a very detailed story explaining. Well, honestly, I've been around a few times, and he, she, or they is a delightful young person.
Yeah.
Who I very much enjoyed being around, regardless of how they choose to lead their life from this point forward. I would be supportive of that,
right,
completely. But I was told yet another story, and I asked why I was not told the truth from the beginning, because that's a pretty big thing not to tell somebody.
Yeah.
Under all these circumstances. And I was told another story as to why that was the case. About 2 years ago, I was told about brother who was born after, and I was told that was coming to live with them. Now, this is the third child. I was told initially that this was a first-time mother that I was getting involved with and paying bills for, and having an ongoing relationship with. And then I was told about, and the story I was told about was contradicted by the story I was told about. And I went to Tobias and said, what the fuck? Is this all? What else do we need to know about? And I was told that was all. And it was his intention to provide a good home for and as they move forward. And then a few months after that, Tobias reached out to me wanting to know what his options were if he was not being fairly compensated in the business that he and Nicole had started together and were operating together as 50-50 owners. And they were never married. So this is an informal arrangement to a certain degree. And I told him that was going to open a can of worms. That he could absolutely do that, and should do that if he had those concerns. But I would talk to Nicole about it first and foremost. And then I didn't hear much about it after that, but he had suspicions. About, a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half, I guess, at this point, Tobias called me and told me that they weren't together as a couple anymore. They were going to keep the business together and live in the same household, and again brought up the concerns about fair compensation, and him not knowing firsthand what money's coming in and how it's being spent. And the involvement I had with the band was I mixed them live at a couple shows that they needed to impress people with. They did the Cruel World Festival, and I went and mixed that show, which was one of the bigger shows they'd ever done. And I was always, again, where I had ignored his band for years. I started paying attention to it when that was how is going to get cared for.
Yeah.
So that's the attention I put into this. And in fairness too, Tobias never wanted me involved in it. This is something he wanted to do himself. He did not want he made that clear to me many times, that he did not want me to do that. The first time I saw his band live was in London, and it was the night of the bombing in Manchester at Ariana Grande's show. And I had just left that tour over a weird disagreement with her business manager. I'd worked for her for years, and there was some stuff happened that I wasn't comfortable with. So I left abruptly and went to work for Katy Perry. And I was in London to do a promo tour with Katy the night of the bombing, and we did the show early. After the show, I went over and went to the show that they were doing. I forget the name of the club in London. Tobias, being the dumbass he can be sometimes, later told me, he goes, I looked out and I thought, wow, there's this English dude there that looks just like my dad. And then a few minutes later went, wow, that old English dude actually has a shirt just like my dad's. And then I watched him actually flinch when he realized it was me that was there. And that was original band. I called in the original band. I honestly don't know if they were the original band or not. The band that Conrad and Danny and Owen were in, which I personally felt was the best version of that band. Well, over the first time I saw them in London, over the next year or so, I watched that band go from being on fire and being everything that people get into bands to experience, the camaraderie, we're conquering the world, we're getting people, we're impressing people with our art.
Yeah.
You know, and then when I mean, the beauty of bands is that communal effort, when that gels into all it can be and the audience embraces it, it's huge. That first show I saw in London really opened my eyes to the band, because I watched people react to the music and they closed their eyes and mouthed the words. So it showed me that the words had meaning. The message in the music had meaning to them.
Yeah.
That message I still hadn't listened to at that point. When we did the live streams, when I mixed the live streams, the first thing you do is clean the tracks up and normalize the vocals. So you take the peaks and the valleys and the vocal level and you kind of normalize it all out and clean up the background noise as much as you can. And so I've got the vocals isolated. So for the first time, I'm actually hearing the words. And I was shocked at the depth, the level of talent. And I was, God, where was I? I was in a hotel room in Oregon. It was right after we had done it. I was trying to get a rough mix to give to the guy that did the video to edit the thing to. And I had been doing it for about 10, 12 hours at that point, just listening to the vocals. And it hit me how good it was.
Yeah.
You know, and for the first time, I honestly saw him as talented. I wanted him to be talented. I had kind of given up hope at that point.
Right.
And I was just pacifying the effort because I thought it was the best chance that had. So we should at least exhaust that before we move on to whatever else is going to ultimately finance future. So I kind of woke up during that, and I called my brother, and my brother's also an interesting anomaly in the music business. He was a guitar tech for 40 some years, and he's now the bass player in ZZ Top. And and I truly believe that we have been attached to this to give it more appeal to people. But because of the acts that we're associated with and the mystery of us, my brother's the most miserable person on stage today, because he replaced somebody he dearly loved. Dusty Hill, the original bass player in DC, was one of the most amazing people I've known in my life. Just a wonderful, wonderful man that was dearly loved by everybody that knew him. Elwood stepped in to replace him so he could get his health in order, and Dusty passed away a short time after that, which was devastating to all of us. And my brother lives in the shadow of that. When I called my brother after oh God, I always get the names wrong. I think it's the Savior record. I always get it wrong. The record about Dominic's struggles. The song, The Bunny Room, that song's amazing. The song, and I think the best song that Tobias has written, and the one that I have personally embraced, was his song about addiction, and it's called "I Needed the Pain."
Yeah.
That song is brilliant.
It's legitimately, that wraps up Dead Kids, and that song, it begs to be reckoned with emotionally on such a level that upon my first few listens to said song, I became quite emotional just upon listening.
That song was written to explain Christopher's death to our uncle and aunt, and meant the world to them.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Tobias and Christopher were close. They had a secret druggy relationship that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
I called Elwood about it's Savior, isn't it?
No, I Needed the Pain is on Dead Kids.
Yeah, I know, but the record about Dominic is
or Savior.
Yeah. That's the first record I had a conversation with my brother about. And my brother also had been mad at him and hadn't paid much attention to him or his music. And during that conversation, my brother goes, "This is great." and he got mad at him for a second and goes, "He had this in him the whole time. What the fuck was he waiting for?"
Then he called him a little shit too.
And called him a little shit. Well, he's called him a little shit since he was a little shit.
Yeah.
That's been his nickname. And my son wants my brother's approval musically more than anything in his life. Because my brother is his inspiration. Tobias never wanted to be like me. He always wanted to be like Elwood.
Yeah.
And he's become that. Elwood wants to play in Softkill. That's he wants to go from ZZ Top to Softkill.
But Elwood's a punk. Elwood loves, like, Killing Joke's one of my all-time favorite bands. That's one of Elwood's favorite bands.
That is his favorite band.
Yeah, it's his favorite band.
A good example of what a complex musician Elwood is. Johnny Thunders, Miles Davis, and Frank Zappa all died in the same time period, in a matter of months. And I can't remember the order, but when the third one died, Elwood called me that day, losing his mind, going, "I've lost all three of my idols."
When we talk about these sorts of things, it's, I think, important maybe for everyone to understand that this is not like a hit piece.
Nicole is his mother.
Yeah.
I adored. The last thing I would ever do is be unfair to his mother.
Right.
And, I wanted to come on here and clear up some of the confusion and the assumptions people are making.
Yeah.
And I felt like our family was being used for someone's agenda here. And I still think that. And the other thing that I wanted to accomplish with this is to compel Nicole to start telling the truth and do what's best for and the other children. There is a fourth child that we found out about as this was breaking just prior. I called Nicole one day. No, Nicole started texting me nasty texts because Tobias had said something to her that made her think that I did not like her. And she responded as if I had said that. I never said that, or anything like that. They were having an argument. I was used for effect in that argument, and she held me accountable for that. I called her right away because I don't like to text. 60-year-old people don't like to text.
Right.
And I called her and said, what the fuck? And she went off on me, and I go, look, why don't we just come up with a way where everybody involved here puts the children first as we move forward now that we know there's so many children involved. And then I was told yet another story as to how she has 4 children, 3 that she never mentioned to anybody for several years. We found out about because Nicole's parents started getting involved in life, and Nicole's parents were they had raised from birth. So we had to be told. That's the only reason we were told. That it's obvious, and again, as each child's existence was acknowledged, a complete fabricated story was put forward as to why that was.
Yeah.
So each time a lie is discovered, a new lie is told instantly. And during that coming to Jesus talk with her, after they had broken up and this stuff is starting to, the tension is building between them, I get another story. And then I start being told things about Tobias, derogatory things on a regular basis. I tried to mediate between them once it was clear they were going their separate ways, literally just to keep the business going, to keep supported. That's been my only goal in this, honestly. And I have shifted my attention wherever needed to make that happen. When Tobias finally went to rehab and finally got sober, he called me and said, look, I'm going to rehab on and on. I go, oh, great, good luck, and hung up on him. And I called Nicole after and said, I was hard on him like you asked me to be. He's on his way to rehab. And while he was in rehab, she told me that she was going to split with him, keep the band, and move forward without him. And I said, you're out of your fucking mind. You've been to a show, right? They only care about him. How are you going to handle that? And I think the appeal of Soft Kill is the songs are true stories.
Yeah.
And it really happened. And he's got an incredible way to put those horrible experiences into words that people can relate to. Several of my friends I've shared the music with, they've all liked it.
Yeah.
All of them. Some of my artist friends are blown away by it. I wore a Soft Kill t-shirt to Katy Perry rehearsals one day, and the guitar player for Katy at the time goes, why do you have a Soft Kill shirt on? And I'm like,
well, he's a punk.
You know about Soft Kill? He goes, yeah, I know about him. Of course I know about him. How do you know about him? And I go, what's my son's band? And he goes, get the fuck out of here. And was blown away and came over and just went on and on and on about what it meant to him.
Yeah.
I have enjoyed that. And I never expected that to happen, to have other people thanked me for what he's done. No, in a way, I'm glad this horrible thing played out the way it did, because I don't think we would have ever known the reality of things,
Right.
if it hadn't. And to summarize where the family is at this point is, Tobias was accused of domestic violence. He was arrested. I was told by Nicole, I'll call it a story because that's really what it was. I was told her version of what had happened, and that the police were involved, that she had been violently attacked, that Dominic had been attacked, that this had happened in front of Dominic, that it had happened many times before, which struck me as odd, because she was literally telling me in all of my mediation that all she wanted was him back in the house, for the band to go forward as it was, on and on in that way. I went through months and months of her literally trying everything in the world to get him to come back. There was never any mention of any type of domestic violence or anything inappropriate towards her or the children or anything. It's quite the contrary.
Yeah.
The family wasn't complete unless he comes back. The Tobias did the stupidest thing anyone could do in a volatile situation like that, which started another relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that really threw things. We had a family Christmas event this last Christmas that Tobias came to with Jesse and Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of what took this to another level, with the tension between Nicole and Tobias, because we had a great time. During that Christmas visit, Tobias told me that he knew Nicole was not treating him fairly financially, and she was trying to manipulate him into coming home by breaking him financially.
Yeah.
And he had set up another home, and his intention was to have a home for Jesse, Dominic, and Jeff.
Yeah.
He wanted to continue being stepfather. He was trying to, he said at the time, and it rings true now, just trying to create a better life for all of them. I think that Christmas vacation, I think Dominic spoke fondly of it after. I think some of the pictures that were posted on social media might have hurt her feelings. I think Tobias starting that relationship while everything else was still volatile was a huge mistake on his part. I think that led the tensions much higher than they would have typically been. But Nicole called, told me a story in detail that compelled me to help her to do what I felt at that time, with the information I was given, was the best and safest thing to do. And Tobias was taken into custody. Nicole was making threats against Jesse. So I paid to get Jesse out of the situation and back to her parents' home, till we figured out what was going on. And I was told a very detailed story to compel me to act that way.
Yeah.
And I think this is very relevant, because what a pattern I'm seeing through this is things are said to manipulate people to do things that they normally wouldn't do if they actually knew what was happening. So I acted on the information that I was given, and I and my wife were supportive of Nicole. Not that we turned our back on Tobias, because in all reality, in the last 9 years, they have both been dishonest to me.
Yeah.
On numerous occasions. So who do you believe? So I chose the safest route to choose. Tobias was able to get himself out of jail eventually. Is on house arrest at his mother's house. He was able to secure enough funding through the ownership of his music to move forward legally. He hired attorneys. There's a criminal attorney dealing with the criminal charges against him. There is a family attorney who's wonderful. I've spoken to both of them, and I'll get to why here in a minute.
Yeah.
And now there's a civil attorney that is handling stuff regarding the business. And I have to be careful what I say detail wise moving forward with this. The attorneys said they had no issue with me doing this as long as it was certain lines weren't crossed, because this is an active case, both criminally, in civil court, and in family court. And Tobias's goal, his stated goal, and certainly my goal, is to do what's best for Dominic in this. As my grandfather came to the rescue of me, I'm going to be there to ensure that he comes out where he needs to come out with this. And I'm determined to hold both of his parents accountable for their actions and or inactions. But I'm in no way want to take any parent away.
Right.
You know, that Dominic has two parents. He loves both of his parents, and both of his parents need to act honorably and righteously as they move forward. And hopefully this will help that along. So where the process is now is, after those attorneys were brought on board, they went to work. And this has been thoroughly investigated. And the reason I'm here talking about this is I have seen hard evidence. I was in Chicago while on tour a few months ago and was able to see firsthand. Nicole went to the Department of Child and Family Services and filed a report trying to get full custody of.
Yeah.
A investigation ensued, a thorough investigation. 7 different investigators were involved. The kids were interviewed more than once. The school was interviewed. Everybody that comes in contact with the children was talked to. They went to the house. An extensive investigation was carried out. It was determined that it was a fraudulent allegation. And I read through all of those reports that those investigators compiled. The story I was told is discounted by that report. The story Nicole told me, every aspect of it was not supported with evidence.
Right.
That's why the case was closed and identified as fraud. And we have been contacted. Everyone that's contacted by them during that investigation has been contacted that there is a further investigation as to why that was done that way.
Yeah.
And anybody involved in this needs to get their house in order, because I think they could end up in a little bit of trouble over this. So what I've seen here is a pattern of people being told what they need to be told to get them to act in a manner that benefits Nicole and the narrative she had been putting forward. I think when it comes time, and as you know, the time is coming where all this evidence will be put forward. They pull all the court records from the other 3 kids. And the story I was told by Nicole, each story, and keep in mind, there were multiple stories. When I was told about, that would have been the time to mention the other kids, especially friggin' brother and nothing. They've talked to the fathers of the other kids. They've talked to the man that Nicole has been married to for the last 20 years. Another thing that was never mentioned. There is a whole series of deceptions throughout the 9 years, a multi-layered deception. And if I had been told the truth of who this person was, I would not have paid her fucking rent for 3 years.
Yeah.
I would not have proceeded the way I did. I would have gone and gotten a lawyer while still in the hospital. Producing a child and being a parent are 2 different things.
Oh, of course.
You know, and you don't neglect your children. And if you're 42 fucking years old, you make your children the priority in your life. I've said that on many occasions over the last 9 years. And here we are in the midst of this stupid fucking mess that was created over someone's rejection. In my visit to Chicago, Tobias told me he was ending the band for the time being. He was going to go into the embroidery business, give it a rest, and then restart the band later without Nicole. The night that this incident happened, he told her that it was over. That's what this is about. And if you've watched what Nicole has done since, it does not fit. None of this fits. You know what I mean? After Tobias had been arrested, 2 days later, she called me hysterical, saying, he's been released. I've got to hide. I got to fear for my life. Oh my God, he's going to get a gun and kill me. And she went on and on and on and on and on, how she's on and on. And then my daughter calls and said, you know, Nicole's in LA. She was in LA at a show. So I don't know what to say, you know, but this matter is going to get solved, you know, and everybody that has done things they shouldn't have done in this. And if you act on a lie, you know, there's one of my favorite, I can't remember if it was Night Gallery of the Twilight Zone. There's this episode where there's a husband and wife, and the wife's acting weird. And it turns out the wife's been raped. And she sees the man that raped her and got away with it. And her husband kills him. And then a few days later, as they're trying to wrap their head around what they've done, the wife points at another guy and goes, oh no, that's him. That's the guy that did it. And then the husband realizes he's murdered an innocent man.